rules around recusal are client confidential, aren't they?
Yeah.
So I don't need to worry about
Nobody but you or me will ever see it.
mailing those in to anyone. I mean, not that there's any, I mean,
No, I understand.
it's not like there's anything.
Yep, gotcha. I feel with a couple today already, actually, so. They are 100% confidential.
Yeah, but I just can't, I have to go back and look, because usually when I was working, we'd always put, was it client confidential or something? There's some words we had to put on everything with the lawyers.
Things sometimes, subject to attorney-client privilege.
Yeah, that was it, subject to attorney-client privilege, yeah.
Something like that. But I do that predominantly. I mean, all of our communications,
Yeah.
if you're seeking any kind of legal advice, it's confidential. But if it's like extra sensitive, sometimes I'll put that on there, because if we get into litigation and somebody's looking through documents to what's to be produced and not to be produced, if you see that stamp, like that jumps out at you.
Let's see.
Okay, like take another one.
In our training, we were told it was confidential whether you have it on or not.
Yeah.
But please make it easier for everyone to find
That's exactly
what
right.
we have to share and don't have to share by marking them.
That's exactly right.
And we are streaming and good to go. And I'm just gonna.
Okay, did you get Deborah in?
Yep, Deborah's in.
Oh, Deborah's in? Okay, good.
Yep.
You're there, Deborah?
Thank you. Okay.
You must be muted, Deborah, because we're not hearing you.
Yeah, that came in, yes, last night.
She doesn't seem to be hearing us.
Yes, I unmuted. My dogs are making noise.
Oh, okay,
so
good. You're in. Okay. So
I'm here.
let's call this the Subdivision Code Subcommittee of the LPC to order. We only have an hour today, and there were three things that I wanted to cover. One is a fairly brief discussion, I think, of how we might handle the public meeting. And then the second is to look at comments on Article 4, which were distributed by Tom yesterday evening. And then the third is to take a quick look at the flow chart that Janelle has handed out. And, does Deborah have that?
Yes, I have everything.
Okay, good. Okay, good.
It's all up on the screen.
Now, we probably do also want to look at a meeting one more meeting to get on the schedule. So we'll do that before we close out. So we have the date for the public meeting, but we're very close to the time when we need to kind of agree that we're pulling the trigger on that, so that Janelle can begin communicating this and, getting people, making builders and others aware of it, et cetera. Have we reserved the community room?
Yes.
Okay. Now, there are a couple ways we could handle the public meeting. There's, I think, a traditional way that we see in Lewis where we would do a presentation and then people can come up to the podium and, give their name and address and make comments. Having just recently, I don't know how many people watched the City Council public meeting on the code changes. But, what I heard were many people making comments about kind of where did this come from, how much input has the public had, et cetera. So another idea which Janelle suggested, and I have to state a little bit of bias here because I like this idea, which was to run it as more of a public information and public sounding meeting, where we would do a 15-minute maybe presentation on what it is, and then we'd have maybe 4 stations in the room, in the community room, on the different aspects of it. And there would be stickies so people can write comments. For people on Zoom, they'd be able to type their comments in under the different headings. And we'd have someone at each table answering questions, so where people had questions, they could get feedback on that. And I think I saw 2 advantages to this approach. One is that it really positions this more clear, I think it kind of more clearly communicates where we are in this process. That we're not presenting something that's kind of, fait accompli and it's on a fast track to city council, I mean, we haven't even taken it to LPC yet. And so I think it positions it more because the process we're following is different. It makes it, hopefully will make it clearer to people that we're at a very early stage in that process. The second thing is, I think it makes it easier for a lot of people to participate. Because I think at the public meetings, some people, it's been on for an hour and a half, they're not going to come up to the podium, and someone already said what they thought. But you don't really get a feeling for how many people in the audience agreed with one position or another. The downside is it's a little bit different, and we'd have to help people understand how to participate and do this. The other downside is there's more work after the meeting to consolidate what's come in than there is where you just have, a recording. So what do people think? Any feedback on this?
Well, I'd like to give feedback on both. Number one, if we did the traditional way, I think it's important to upfront share the timeline, show how much professional expertise, particularly with Tom and Charlie, and that we've had Glenn's counsel throughout, and that Janelle is a professional planner and merely has been, provided with information and input, but also give them the dateline on this subcommittee to let people know that this has been gone over with a fine-tooth comb. Because I did watch, and there were a lot of questions about process, and I think people need to know that this is not just, thrown together willy-nilly. Yeah. There's been a lot of, Nancy, you've put an incredible amount of hours in since you've been chairing. Yeah. On this other hand, I have participated in Del Dot workshops using the second format that you've described. I think having a greeter to explain it is really important, the process. I'd be happy to serve in that role if we went that way. But I do think I have two worries. I worry, number one, that just a lot of people wouldn't show up and engage. The other, as hot as the meeting was the other night, only stakeholders who felt that they had a particular, something on the line, showed up. And I think if we did the interactive workshop, we would lose out on we risk just, having a party and no one comes. And we lose out on the Zoom aspect, which a lot of people in Lewis really enjoy. And we also do create a lot of feedback that may or may not be, some of it may be relevant, some may not be as relevant. And, I think those are the ups and downs too.
Yeah, I was going to say, the second format is the Del Dot Dog and Pony Show, which they've had at the high school. They basically set out a 12-foot aerial map of affected road, and then they have stations around. And the big question everybody asks is, how does this affect me? Where am I along this change? And then they go to the appropriate station. The Del Dot engineers try to explain things to them. Either way could work. I mean, it's just give it a shot. Try it.
Now, there will be a minimum of 2 public meetings in the traditional way after this, keep in mind, because the LPC will want to have one, and then Mayor and City Council will want to have one. So
I just wonder how you're going to get the information out to the public under the second format so that they we've done so much that they get some summary breadth of what it is that we're talking about, even if it were split up into 4 different groups or however many. Are you talking about like per article?
I think
or
we'd
something?
still be doing, in a sense, the front end of the meeting would be the same.
Okay.
Whether we were doing, having people come up to the podium to speak, or whether we have them go to areas to speak. So we still will have to go through, if you think of the slide deck that I've shared so far, we still have to go through, why we did this, what we did, a highlight of the main, of the different kind of categories of changes, and then a highlight of the areas that have been, that are, in a sense, the most changed.
You may want to do a hybrid of both. I mean, try to combine it, do the dog and pony show for so many minutes or length of time, and then we all sit down and ask for feedback on the podium. That might work too.
That's actually,
Good idea, Joe.
that's an interesting idea, is to have people split up, do their individual things, and let people come back and,
Yeah, set a time,
Yeah.
until 8 o'clock or so.
I like that idea, yeah,
Well,
yeah,
that's podium time.
yeah.
Meeting at 10 a.m.?
So when we discussed it, it was going to be like morning to early afternoon. It was going to be kind of like a midday item, because the city does actually have a resiliency committee meeting at 4 that afternoon that goes to 5:30. So if you don't like that and you want to push it to the evening, we can do that. I need to make sure there's nothing else going on that night. Give me just a quick minute to double check the calendars, because I think you guys were talking the last time about midday. And again, we'll have it recorded. And what we could do is I know Deborah brought up the concern, which is definitely valid, about the Zoom. And I was thinking of kind of creating the stations on the city's website as well. So if you were going to be on Zoom, you could actually just go to the city's website and participate that way, and also be in person, because we know there's still a lot of people who are, not quite ready to come out of their cocoon and want to stay, and completely respect that. There are some days I don't want to come out. I like my little safety bubble. But I was thinking we could kind of replicate the stations and have the presentation and everything on the website as well. So we didn't lose those people, because again, we're trying to reach out and engage as many people as possible.
What is our meeting date set at?
The 23rd of November, it's the Tuesday before Thanksgiving.
One more thought is, just because of the time frame, though, I don't know. I think I'm leaning towards the traditional now as I reflect more, because people can easily participate from out of town. And one other question, I know that, the Cape Gazette, particularly Nick Ross, does a fantastic job covering all city items, but, could we do a press release in advance to Nick and just let him know that, could you publish this information for the public, so they're aware and maybe can go preview?
Yeah, we can definitely reach out and
I wasn't quite clear on the breakout sessions, and I don't know if you've thought about it. The other ones that you're at, it's based on locations in a study area or things like that. I'm wondering, have you thought about what, if you do 4 breakouts, are they different parts of this code, or are they different topics? What's the thought process in that?
I mean, I was kind of thinking that we would do one that's really just about the change in the process, because we're making a whole series of process changes. And that's kind of, in a way, I mean, it's not independent of the code, and that process gets, written into the code, but have that as one area, and another area, and I think we'd have to look through, if you think of the 22, criteria kind of that are now in a different format, that would be one. And I thought we might want to do something that might be a breakout on the things that are like almost net new that are being put in there. Lighting, open space, those things. And I don't know, maybe a fourth one. I mean, I haven't really, have you looked through and thought, in your mind, Janelle, what you do?
Those were the big ones, and I thought definitely having a table, because I ran that by you, but having a table where you could just give us general comments, have some comment forms, or you could, go to have a computer so you could type in an online form of just general comments. And we even had an idea about, what other items should the commission be looking at? Because we do get a lot of people who like to, well, why aren't you looking at this? And understanding, well, we're looking at the subdivision code, but we like that idea. Maybe that's a parking lot item that goes then back to the planning commission, like if we want to look at some type of section of the zoning code. But I was thinking, the big things, do people like the new process? Which do they prefer? The existing or the proposed? Kind of breaking down. It's like we removed the 22 from this section, but we moved them into this section. Comments on that, and somebody could give kind of an overview, and then it's like, hey, we're also looking at changing the standards and then having guidelines, because I think that those are the big things we're doing in the code. Is we've shifted the 22, we're changing the process, and we've changed standards and guidelines, so people could understand, these are now additional options that the commission and council have to play on, and then a table for public comments, and then in the Rollins Center we have those beautiful TVs that we can always have, if they miss the PowerPoint presentation at the beginning, we can have that running. It's just nobody's giving the overview, and we could always repeat it at some point during the time. I've done a lot of planning sessions, and it's you usually you repeat the presentation, the 10-15 minute presentation, twice, once at the beginning, sometimes in the middle, so people who can't make one can make the other.
And it's interesting, Deborah, because I'm concerned, as I know you are, about, we're doing this before Thanksgiving and, whatnot. And I actually was thinking this was a way that people who couldn't be there in person could more fully participate. Because, when we do that up, someone who actually wasn't even able to dial in at the time, we could leave it running for people to add in, to type in specific comments. So, they're always still, we can say the record's open, there's always still time for them to send in a letter, but they could actually participate in those areas, looking, seeing the presentation and then doing that on their own time frame.
I think Joe's idea of a hybrid makes sense somewhat, if I think about the expectations for this meeting.
Yeah.
Is what we want to do is tell the story of what this is, why it was done, what's gone into it, and what some of the big changes are. And that's going to take a bit of time to just convey that information.
Yeah.
And I think that's important early on, is to provide that. So I'm almost thinking that part of it, I'm not sure how much of the meeting, but probably more than 15 minutes is needed to do that, to really set that, or help with that expectation, is to let people know why it was done and where we are and what's changed. I do like the interactivity, especially if I think some people do enjoy a meeting where you can go and talk to someone face to face and have dialogue instead of going up to the podium and talking at a meeting. So I do see the value in having that, and we'll probably hear some good feedback. But I do think we need to make sure at the end of that event that we've gotten the information out, and not read all the details, because that would take almost the whole meeting. But what, the PowerPoint is that's already been prepared, and having some questions on that. So I think the idea of a hybrid makes a lot of sense. For that
Yeah,
reason.
I'm liking that too. Deborah, where are you on the hybrid versus traditional? Or
I think it's an excellent idea. I think that we have so much to cover, and that I am worried about how much we have to accomplish designing reinventing a new wheel, and the time that we have to do that is a little concerning. And perhaps the hybrid could be a way to gently introduce a new way of operation without throwing completely into it.
Yeah. And, I also like the idea of, when people are going to these stations and doing their comments, having kind of a parking lot piece of paper where they can stick these on, because I think it's, as a member of the public, you don't like coming to a meeting and saying, well, I want to tell you about such and such, that that this is where I think you really need to make changes, and the response is, we're not looking at that today,
Yeah.
Or someone, Joe already addressed that, that you can't double, give information twice.
Yeah.
Whereas in the format that you're describing, it's really okay if 20 people write the same comment.
That's right.
We've heard it, and
Yeah.
we can document that.
Yeah.
Yeah, one of the DelDOT dog and pony stations was a listing of priorities, not necessarily in priorities, but then they provided little round sticky dots to basically, the more dots indicated how the public wanted priorities set, And the other question I have is, if you have, let's say, 4 workstations, and you're trying to interact with the public, how do you get your camera moving to each different workstation? I mean, the camera's fixed, and you're not doing a close-up. I mean, it's
I
an
guess-
issue.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I think that's an important, and I don't know whether this is a legal question in terms of, do we need to have a camera at each station? And,
No,
it seems to me you have meetings where you break out, and, there will be a recording of the comments that came at each of those stations.
Right.
You
You're
know.
doing a presentation at each station.
No. The idea is we do the presentation up front for everyone on everything.
Okay.
And then there'll be the 4 stations, and people, it's not breakout rooms. You move amongst those stations according to your interest.
Just for looking at, seeing what's there.
Yeah.
Then you go back to the podium.
And then at a certain point, we'll say, everybody come back, we're going to hear,
Okay.
Yeah, there is no legal issue with doing a charrette type event. When the public body is together and gaining consensus or conducting public business, that has to be in a form that the people can observe it happening. But when you're in breakout sessions, when different members of the group are in different locations, no issue. Can do it.
Because this is not a hearing.
Correct. It's a workshop.
It's a workshop. It's a public session. Yeah.
And we will have the Zoom going for the presentation, and we can just leave it going, and you can watch people kind of wander around the room and leave comments wherever, and then when we do the presentation again, we can, start the streaming again. And then, of course, it'll go on the YouTube page.
I think we have consensus. Silence is consent, okay? So I think we need to, I'm looking to Janelle to really help us in terms of firming up what would be at each station. And, there is a process that has, that you're going to have to go through so that we have the Zoom side of this
Yes.
functioning.
Yep, I'll work with, we'll get the Zoom set up, and then we'll get the website set up to go live that day. So we have this starting at 10 o'clock. How late do you guys want to go? I do have 4 o'clock that day, so we need to be done by no later than 3, so, but do you want to do, 10 to noon, 10 to 1?
10 to 1.
I was thinking 10 to 1, yeah.
Okay.
Everybody
Perfect.
good? Okay. Okay, good. So,
We'll do this at the Rollins Center.
Correct.
yes. Yeah. And I hope all of our subcommittee members are available to be there that day for that time. Okay, good. 'Cause
And if there's a specific, table or section you want to be in charge of, let me know, because Deborah's already said she wants to be the greeter.
that's great.
You know what, I will say that might be too easy of a job. There are certain topics that I personally feel more comfortable on than others. But, maybe just a suggestion that Joe, you've been on the council, on the planning commission longer than anyone.
Decades.
With the 22 points, you probably have a tape roll of that in your head.
Yeah.
I'm flexible. I feel pretty comfortable with some topics that we've discussed. Others, not as much. But I'm flexible.
But Deborah, I think it is a good idea.
I'm good with that.
Okay, good. I think it is a good idea to have a greeter, though, because when people come in, they're going to wonder, they'll see tables set up, they'll wonder what's happening, and the earlier we can kind of explain this to people as they're arriving, the better, so.
I can volunteer some staff members to help kind of guide.
That would be
hey,
good.
Here, this is what's happening
Yeah.
at these tables, so, you know, and,
So I can work on that.
Question I have is, how do we condense Tom's 85 pages into something that could be put on display boards with not only the new, but
With the old,
before, you know, like, oh my God.
So, and I think that's where we want to focus on, you know,
The highlights.
the highlights, the big
Key points.
changes to the code. It's, one is clearly the process, and this is how my brain was thinking. If you don't like it, you can,
No.
and Nancy, if you want to move on, just tell me. But that could be like the dot exercise. Which one do you like better? And the more dots is, you know, that one. And then we could have someone, like, if, you know, for several sections of the item, we could have Charlie, you know, Charlie and Tom man, you know, the standards and guidelines section, going, okay, this is what we're doing, you know, here's this Post-it note, give us comments. And then Brian just went blank on the third one, and then of course the fourth one is, hey, what are the public comments? Just comments overall holistically, because I think we definitely want that. Because some people aren't comfortable talking at a microphone, and some people are, so we give them that option.
But we also, whenever people do speak at the microphone, there's a tendency to say, you know, if someone has already said what you want to say, don't come up and say it again. And, you know, it makes for an efficient meeting, but it doesn't mean you're getting a sense of how, you know, how do the bulk, what does the bulk of the community feel about this?
Yeah.
Not that we're voting on this, but just, it doesn't give you that same sense.
Yeah, this is the sense we want them to.
Nancy, can I say that that's excellent, and I commend you for making that point.
Thank you.
I guess I was thinking about that, like, if you put dots up on the old versus the new, or however, I mean, how much authority are the dots going to have over the whole final product? Because there may be some things in there that don't jive with the way we've been thinking, you know?
Yeah, and I think that's where we have somebody kind of explain it, kind of point out the differences. Like, we'll have the two side by side, and somebody can stand there and.
Yeah. And in the introduction, we can explain, with these dots, we're not voting right now, guys. This is not, you know,
Just trying to get the idea, like.
it's to give a sense, and, you know, there'll be more changes in this, so, you know, you may be voting on, you know, be putting dots against something today that may change after the LPC looks at it, or after, you know. Okay, so let's move on, and for the next meeting, we'll try to have a little bit more definition of this, so everyone can get involved. We now have a half hour left. Shall we begin on, I doubt we're going to get through all of Article 4, but have people had a chance to look at what Tom sent out? Yes, I'm seeing.
A little bit.
Okay. Yes. Okay. Let's go to Article 4, which, if I should have put a sticky on my page to show where it was.
Page 40,
Oh, thank you.
with the ones with the
Yeah.
comments on the side.
I tried to put in my email what's changed in the whatever 85 pages there are there. You know, a lot of it hasn't changed, but in my email I highlighted, like, in Article 4 was the things about lighting has changed significantly, and I added landscaping. So those are the two things that I added in Article 4.
Now, I think we've looked at the
Go ahead.
site design section already. Does anyone have any comments on that? Because I think probably what we want to get to is,
A lot of the sections in Article 4, I think,
Yeah,
there are some that, like Tom's saying, we might want to focus on.
So shall we move on unless someone has anything on the other site suitability? Shall we go to C, lighting requirements? That's page 45. And when we talked about this before, we said we wanted to skinny it down a bit. And it's a bit skinny down, but there's still a lot. So, comments on C, lighting requirements.
When I skinnied it down, what I did, just to clarify, was I tried to focus on subdivision and land development. Some of the comments from the original meeting was that there was things in there that would apply to other things, minor subdivisions and just building permits. So a lot of that was taken out and put in, as I said in my email, separate file in case we want to look at capturing those in environmental protection or another section. We also took out the recreation. That entire section came out because the comment was that it would be covered by the overall standards about lighting, things like that. So that was removed. Then some of the provisions were moved into guidelines instead of standards. Again, guidelines. I think the premise there was that they don't apply throughout the city. They're only specific areas, and it would be more appropriate to have them in guidelines so that they could be considered, but they're not going to be considered for every development that comes in. That would include the habitat areas and some of the provisions for residential development that don't apply necessarily to a BPW review, but they could apply to a planning review, again, and not to all developments. And then also everything about what should be on a plan, that's been removed and folded into the checklists. There's still, I could say that there's still technology stuff in there. I looked at some other communities and saw pretty much the same language, so I'm a little bit hesitant to remove too many standards out of there of lumens and things that needed to be in there, but I did also take into consideration Janelle's comments that we need to be able to understand this. And I think it comes down to what you're asking for on the plan is where's the lights at and where's the grid, but also the types of fixtures that are being provided. And that the details should be in there about how bright they are, what's the color of the lights, things like that. So someone who's reviewing a plan that's been submitted, if the applicant's given the information, all the person's doing is checking that do these light fixtures meet the requirements of the ordinance? It's not like we have to go out with measurements and take it when the lights are on at night. Again, I was trying to look at taking out enough so it was clear and the public could understand it, but leaving enough in so that there's standards to base decisions on.
Tom, not knowing everything by heart on this section like you do, one of my complaints I always have is about entry signs, like monument signs, or even identification signs, like I think it's Parcells Funeral Home, where there's a monument sign and they're highlighted by two floodlights, one of which blinds you as you drive by it, you know. I don't know if there's anything like that in here about eliminating floodlights at entryways, at monument signs. I don't know if that's covered.
Well, it was in there, Joe. It was taken out because it was not really considered part of a subdivision per se, as more of maybe a nuisance. Maybe that's not the right word, but something that could happen anywhere. And remember, we talked a lot about flags and other things that.
Right.
I think that kind of falls under that category of will the city want to regulate it and how will they regulate it? And it's not just for major subdivisions, it's for all, potential uses.
All commercial signage
Not yet.
it could fall into.
Okay,
So
down the road.
we can add that to the list.
Certainly for subdivisions that have a sign at the gateway to the subdivision.
Like Powelltown Village.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And that's still in there. Yeah.
That's in there, is it? Because I thought I saw something on containing the light on the,
Right. I think it's in the guidelines now.
Okay.
okay. Yeah, I have to say, when I looked through it, I thought, oh, it's still really long, but then I tried to identify what would we want to take out, and I was having trouble eliminating things. So if people have comments on other comments. Okay, anything else on lighting? We're copacetic with lighting?
Well,
Go ahead.
can I just
Charlie?
say,
Yeah.
I'd like to look at it, I haven't really looked at it.
Okay, yeah.
Anytime I'll just offer any comment, I don't know that I'll have a whole lot, because it's not my strength area, but I would like to take a look at it.
Yeah, and, I mean, we just got all of this,
Yeah.
you know, for most of us, we saw it this morning.
I thought I was
So,
sometime
you
this
know,
morning, but I
have you,
got tied up.
for the other committee members too, if something else occurs to you, please send them in to Tom and Janelle.
Yeah, because then we can make those changes.
Yeah.
Happy to do that.
Okay, we're on to landscaping.
Oh, and I want to just follow up, I will be presenting the landscaping to the Parks and Rec Commission in November.
Okay, great,
I am on their agenda.
great.
Super.
Did you put this section together, Janelle?
Nope.
Tom?
Tom did, right?
I had reviewed it a couple meetings ago. I folded those comments, and I really just imported it into here, and I think there was a couple things I added to the checklist that were in here, but I didn't really change anything in the landscaping other than what changed from the meeting when the subcommittee reviewed it last. And I'd say there's a lot in there, but it does cover, it's not just landscaping like a landscaping plan. Street trees are in there, buffers, screens. So there's a lot of topics that are covered.
Now, we had a discussion before, and I haven't gone through this in super detail, because I focused on the completely net new areas. We had a discussion about kind of historic trees, or, you know, large trees. Did something get added in terms of the protection of?
Well,
Yes.
what's in there, it's not saying that you can't take down existing trees. It's saying that they can count, and they're encouraged to be counted towards landscaping requirements unless they're invasive species.
Okay.
Things
Oh,
like
it does
that.
say for the buffer.
Yep, for buffers.
To existing trees greater than 3 inches in caliper, or greater than 12 feet in height, shall be preserved to the extent possible, and can be counted. Okay.
Page 53 for everybody keeping
Yes,
track.
sorry. Yes. No, it's okay. Page 53, B, as in boy. Okay, shall we move on to streets? Wait, no, there's 2 pages sticking together. Open space requirements.
Are we,
Go ahead, Deborah.
is that enough with the preservation of large trees?
And don't forget, this, the Parks and Rec Commission will review the landscape plan, because that's their charge for that, and they do take the preservation of trees seriously.
Yes.
Yes, very seriously, as Joe has said.
Yeah.
So I think, I'm hoping they're gonna be excited about the changes and the proposals.
But to support them, have we said enough about, I mean, they take it seriously, but you can take something seriously and it's not in the code. It's hard to,
And I'm hoping to get some of that feedback when
Okay.
we hear from them.
Okay.
So if we missed the mark on something, I'm pretty sure they're gonna let us know.
Okay,
Or let me
great.
know, and then I will
Yeah.
pass it on to everybody.
great.
Yeah, I think it's important because,
absolutely.
you know, for years there's been talk of the tree ordinance, yet it kind of hasn't moved anywhere. And want to make sure that we are addressing that.
I think one thing to add in is too that you mentioned, Deborah, a tree ordinance. It's really important. I think if you were to put it in subdivision ordinance that you have to protect trees, some applicants can see that as, well, we need to get rid of the trees before we submit an application in, so it's good to have a tree ordinance in place.
Yeah,
to just that issue, because it's not uncommon that you see someone who's thinking down the road, they're clearing trees out to anticipate that they're going to have to, those things will be in somewhat of something they have to deal with. I do think other communities look at trees and green areas as protecting them overall before the subdivision process, so that, to cut that off. It's just something to think about.
Yeah, I actually have the same concerns about grading, because, I mean, and if I understood I typed in a question about that on some version of this, and if I wasn't sure whether it's if the lot is 5,000 feet, or if they're just grading under 5,000 feet before they apply, you can regrade however you want and then put in your application. Is that the case?
It's the 5,000 square feet is disturbance area, so you can't disturb without a permit.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's when the conservation district gets involved, is 5,000 square feet or more, and then you need a more detailed permit. If you do any type of site disturbance, you need typically a general permit from the conservation district, but once you start disturbing 5,000 square feet or more, then you have to have a detailed permit from the conservation district. But I think Charlie's looking to make sure there wasn't anything with the
discussion to
the lot
see.
grading.
I
Yeah.
don't remember anything about a 5,000 square foot.
Well, it was in the answer to my comment on kind of asking about grading before you put in your, you can basically, you can pre-grade under 5,000 feet, if I'm correct, okay, if I understand this correctly. You can pre-grade under 5,000 feet, then do your grading plan, and you start with that as the existing, and then you say whatever you're going to do additional. Is that correct? And I guess my other question is, so you build the subdivision, and maybe I don't like that berm, or I didn't want to swale near my backyard. If I'm disturbing under 5,000 square feet, can I just go in and dump rocks, or
You mean the homeowner or the developer?
the homeowner?
No, I mean, it's going to be subject to the recorded plan. The recorded plan will have those swales and different things on there as part of the approved subdivision. So an individual owner would be in violation of the approved plan if they were to do that, even if it's under 5,000 square feet.
Okay, thank you.
Even if they did it prior to applying, they need a permit to be able to do that anywhere within the city?
If it's over 5,000 square feet that you're disturbing, but if it's under 5,000 square feet,
You don't need a conservation district permit under 5,000 square feet. And there may be some other permit you need, depending on what you're doing. But I think that you're right, Nancy, that if you're going to do a major subdivision, you probably, if you had a large plot of land, you probably could disturb under 5,000 square feet, then come in with your plan, which is a disturbance of more than 5,000 square feet, and be required to get a permit. Yeah.
That feels like a loophole to me. That alarms me as well.
Yeah, I'm just trying to think, I don't think
I'm raising it, Deborah.
There's a lot grading requirement now, which I just don't remember 100% because it's
Yeah.
been a long time since I wrote it and looked at it, that I kind of want to go back and look at that. Because that lot grading, I don't think it has anything to do with 5,000 square feet, but it's put in there so that you don't
Yeah.
disturb your neighbor's property, for instance.
Yeah, and I'm just trying to think, because typically, somebody might get the application approved and then flip it. They're not typically trying to get it, well, and it also depends on how they work the contract, because I've seen it, this is just my brain kind of trying to think through that loophole, is sometimes you don't actually even go to settlement until you get an approved plan. So you've got a prospective purchaser bring your application through, but they don't own it sometimes until they get the approval, and then sometimes they flip it even beforehand. So I'm just trying to think, because it is a loophole.
Yeah, and
I'm just
Charlie,
trying to think.
I didn't think it had 5,000 square feet in here. It's when I asked the question if you were allowed to do that, the answer was yes, as long as it's under 5,000 square feet that you're disturbing,
Yeah.
Nancy, my take on this is if you have a development that's going in, the general contractor may want to cut a driveway and put in a construction trailer. A very small footprint and a little parking lot for 2 or 3 vehicles. That might be initial disturbance of less than 5,000 square feet. That might be one of the reasons.
Which is, yeah.
Tom, do we have
And
that?
you're also getting into the open space though, once you start paving. Or the lot coverage percentage too. So,
Tom, do we still have that section of code?
A temporary trailer with a dirt road or dirt cut or whatever, yeah.
the site.
Wait, Tom, do we still have that section of code that says you can't do any work without an approved plan?
Yes,
Because there's something in the code that says, so as you're going through the subdivision application, you're not touching that site until you get the approved plan.
So you couldn't
well, I
even
was
disturb under
going to
5,000
say,
square
there was a
feet?
recent experience
Yeah.
with a subdivision that was submitted to the city, and there was a path cut through trees, and some disturbance, and it was brought to the attention of the Conservation District. They went out and looked at it, and their response was it was less than 5,000 square feet, and they were doing it to do soil testing. So they needed to go through parts of the development or proposed development to get access to it and clearing trees. So as long as at least when it was brought up, the Conservation District looked at it, and they said they sent an inspector out and reported back to the city it was less than 5,000 square feet. They didn't need a permit, and also reiterated they were doing it for soil testing and preparation of the site. So that's all I could say, is that there would be a permit needed and filed ahead of time beforehand, but in my experience was that unless it was a larger area, they could proceed with it.
But I think in Joe's example, they would not be able to, because you're not putting in a construction entrance and you're not dropping a construction trailer on the site without an approved site plan, approved plan. Because I think we've got code that
True.
limits that, so, okay.
Yeah.
All right, perfect, I just want to make sure, I'm like, I thought that was in the code.
Okay,
Open space.
Oh, sorry.
59.
before we move on though, should we somehow address that and eliminate that loophole exactly for the example that Tom just gave?
Go on.
Could we be a simple fix of the under,
Limit
this applies to
people from doing
all
stuff on the
size?
So requiring some sort of permit or some sort of something be implemented for disturbances under 5,000 square feet. We did that in Rehoboth. I mean, we initially went to, what's her name at this Conservation District?
Jessica.
Jessica. We went to Jessica and said, hey, the city would really like Conservation District to do what it normally does for disturbances over 5,000 square feet for lots, because Rehoboth's standard lot is 5,000 square feet, so nobody goes to Conservation District. And she said, thanks, but no thanks. we don't want to take on things less than 5,000 square feet. So Rehoboth did institute a few things. It was mostly, they were mostly concerned about stormwater runoff and those sorts of things. We implemented certain measures you had to take for disturbances under 5,000
Fence,
square feet.
probably.
Right, silt fence was one of them. So you can do something like that to address under 5,000 square feet disturbances.
Which I think we have, with our lot grading plan requirements and the lot grading certificate.
That's right, that's right.
So I think it sounds like, based on the current code and some of the stuff Charlie has, we have narrowed any loophole to try and get through. But, you know, I can't 100% say there isn't a loophole, because
Well, let me
people
go
are
back to
creative.
just the question, because I thought the answer was, if they're disturbing less than 5,000 square feet, they go at it and do whatever you want. Wasn't that the answer? Have we done anything in here that changes that answer?
In terms of grading, I think you have, like, with the lot grading plan and the requirement for a lot grading certificate, that the grading and runoff diversion on any particular lot, no matter what size it is, the way I understand it, has to go through that process, get approved with a lot grading certificate, to make sure that it's meshed with the greater grading plan of the whole development. But that's just grading and runoff.
So they
That's
can't-
not like
Well,
disturbance
but
for a driveway.
that's at least one thing, that's good, so
Yeah.
they can't go in and regrade 5,000 square feet. Can they go in and clear cut 5,000 square feet of forest?
That's a good
Yes.
Or
But there's nothing that prohibits that now.
Disturb, it would be grading, so.
So there's nothing that prohibits, if I have, and I think we've talked about it in different subcommittees, is that maybe we should be looking at a woodland protection, tree protection ordinance, because I could go right now and chop down all the trees on my property, and there's nothing that prohibits me from doing that, because I have that ability. Now, I would never want to, because I love my trees, but they just like to fall down on their own. But I think I know we've brought that up a number of different times, and I think definitely that's something that I know a number of commission members are looking for doing. I'm not sure how it fits into this one, but
Versus, yeah.
Tom, your thoughts on that, or should that be more of a zoning change to do
Yeah,
something like woodland
I
protection?
think for what I've seen it's a separate one because we're dealing with the subdivision process, and it's really important if the concern is removing trees, that it's for any development, kind of like what Charlie was saying for a grading plan, that any disturbance like that would be something where the city would look at it, and an applicant would need to go through a process of going to the city and either providing a plan that says we're removing these trees for maintenance and maybe they're putting new trees in or something like that, but that would typically be outside of the subdivision process. And for good reasons too. You'd want to catch it before someone's submitting a subdivision, what's going on with tree removal.
Okay, we're at 5 minutes to the hour, and I think we do need to look at dates for, and could you remind me the date of our next meeting? so I
The
can
next
find it easily in my-
meeting, I want to say it's November 4th.
Next week, yeah.
Is November 4th at 1 o'clock, and we have plenty of time for that one.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, today, we just did not have a lot of time. And
Are
then-
people okay for I'm really pushing this now, guys, for a 3-hour meeting? I had that one down as a 2-hour.
So did I.
Yes.
Yes?
November 4th?
November 4th, yeah.
1 to 4.
I could do that.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Do we want to schedule the next week?
Yes.
So we're looking at the 8th, 9th, 10th, and 11th. Let me get the building, see, make sure there's no conflicts with the room.
The 11th is Veterans Day, if that's,
That's why I don't have any meetings on the agenda. Thank you, because I'm like, that one looks really good. I'm like, no, that doesn't work.
Is the city closed that day?
So the city is closed on Veterans Day, I'm guessing.
Yes, we are. So we could do the 10th. We are good for the 10th in the afternoon.
I'm good.
1 PM again on the 10th, is that good for people?
Wednesday, the 10th, yes.
Okay.
I could do it remotely. I'm coming down next week, but the 10th I have a meeting in the morning further away. But if you don't mind me doing it remotely, I'll do that.
That's fine, I think it's been very effective having you remotely on this one, so I think we're good.
Okay, great.
1 p.m. on the 10th?
1 PM on the 10th. Let's put it down as a 2-hour for now, and we'll see where we are if we need to.
Got it.
My goodness.
Okay. And I think this is really our chance now, between now and next week, to really go through Article 4 and say, is there anything we're still worried about? Okay?
Nancy, is there even a time, this is pressing it, that we could even push to a 3-hour?
Could what?
That we could even push to a 3-hour meeting?
Yeah, well, the next meeting is going to be 3 hours, right?
Correct.
2, right? 2 hours I have.
Our next meeting is 3 hours. The one after that, I
Right.
said temporarily we'll put it in as 2. But why don't, if people could try to leave that 3rd hour open, because I think we'll see whether we,
That's in the 3rd hour, but I'm not as critical as.
yeah. I mean, I think at that point, Glenn, we're going to be doing more planning for the meeting and things like that, so hopefully we won't have,
Yeah.
a lot of legal questions, so.
Okay.
Hey, Tom?
Yeah,
Hey, I still am going through sections 23 and 24 of Article 3.
right.
They're the conditional acceptance and final acceptance sections.
Right.
And I'm pretty well through 23, but I'm going to forward my comments on those sections too, because there's some discrepancies in there as compared to the way we really do it, close out a project. Okay?
Okay.
So I wanted to let you guys know that.
And also look at Article 5. This is the first time we're really looking at Article 5. I think that the changes there are more just making it consistent with things earlier in terms of timeframes, et cetera. But,
Absolutely.
but let's make sure we've gone through that too. So our next meeting, we can truly cover 4 and 5. And let's not forget, Articles 1, 2, and 3, we've got in this version, we have the comments that we made at our last meeting on those have been incorporated here. So please do a check to make sure, we're happy with what we've gotten to.
And Charlie, if I could interrupt for just a minute about Article, I guess it's 1 or 2, for definitions. Charlie, as you're going through streets and water and sewer, if there's any new terms or terms that need different clarification back in the definition section, let me know or highlight them or...
Yeah. I know, yeah, okay, I will do that, Tom.
I did a quick look at the 22 to see if they were incorporated in the other parts. And two things kind of popped out at me. One is the first, number 1, which is compliance with the provisions of this chapter, Chapter 197 zoning, and any other applicable provisions of the municipal code of the city of Lewis. I don't think we have that anywhere in this new version. And it just seemed to me that's something, it's kind of like an overarching, hey, we're reviewing the subdivision against this, but remember, you have to be complying with everything else in the code. Do we need to have
Be
it?
standard throughout.
Should we add that to 174 applicability,
Yeah,
which is in the general provisions in Article 1?
Yeah.
That just clearly covers, you got to comply with everything?
I think that would be good. And then the other one is number 21, which is job creation. I'm not sure what,
I'm going to look at
didn't quite
Glenn for that
understand that one, so,
Yeah,
That's apple pie and motherhood.
Yeah.
Everything else, you know.
that's really difficult to incorporate.
it's just, I don't want to stand up at a public meeting and say, all 22 are incorporated in this, and if I was in the audience, I'd raise my hand, I don't see job creation, I wouldn't have an answer for it.
So maybe,
I would say that job creation being created by the change in process and within the city. That
I don't know whether there should be somewhere one that says, other factors that can be considered are job creation, providing diverse housing options. I mean, there are things here that aren't covered, that used to be covered.
Right.
And these are things that are in the comprehensive plan, so,
Well, no, we're changing the comprehensive plan.
well, but it isn't changed yet. Yeah.
and therein lies the problem because realistically, some of those are questionable about whether they apply to Lewis right now.
Well, job creation is tough because it could be like temporary job versus permanent jobs. Obviously, there's going to be temporary.
I mean, especially in a subdivision,
From my perspective, it really doesn't play a role in subdivision review. I mean, I would never win a case that you deny a subdivision because it doesn't create jobs. I'm not going to win that case, so.
So what I'm hearing is maybe we take that one out and explain
And just
why that
acknowledge
one
it.
takes it.
Yeah.
We're taking
Acknowledge
that
it.
one out? Okay.
What about providing diverse housing options? That's in the comp plan.
Personally, I think that becomes a loophole that we have no we have no definitions for what diverse housing options are. It's a mess.
Well, it depends how it's zoned. I mean, it could be zoned for single-family homes, it could be zoned for townhouses.
Duplexes, apartments.
Yeah.
Maybe it's,
in there for zoning.
Yeah.
could that be an encourage? I'm just trying to think if we want to, maybe it's because it can't be a guideline, but maybe it's in the intent somewhere that, because I mean, some places you can only have single-family houses based on the zoning, so.
Yeah, I think, right, it's another one that I wouldn't say you approve or deny it based upon, I mean, if the zoning allows for whatever housing type's proposed, we can't deny a subdivision based upon, that issue, but I do think it's something to be encouraged. Certainly, it's in our CDP, and it should be somehow incorporated within in the subdivision code to encourage it.
I
think it's also become something that, a catchphrase that a developer can use to apply for higher density zoning than is compatible with the existing neighborhood. So we need to be very careful of that.
So, can work the other way.
I mean, right now, I think it's stated a little bit in the motherhood statement area, but because it is in the comprehensive plan, I think probably that statement should still be here somewhere. I don't know.
Yeah,
Perhaps, like you said, Nancy, other considerations.
Yeah.
or maybe we put that something in like the purpose, is we encourage, diverse housing types in the subdivision code. I'm thinking off the top of my head, trying to figure out where to put it.
About compatibility, though, if we're going to add that, let's add some language about, compatible with the existing neighborhood, because that's in our we've got that as a point too.
Well, that's
We
in
want to give a pass
Actually, I think-
to high density.
I think it actually might be covered in the purpose, just the purpose of this chapter is to assure that sites are suitable for all development purposes, including residential, commercial, industrial, institutional, recreation, to assure that these sites are properly prepared for human habitation, to provide for a harmonious development of the city, for coordination of city streets, proposed streets, parks, and other features. Because it keeps going on. That's a really long sentence.
Yeah, it's really long.
It's a paragraph of a sentence. Sorry, I just looked at that. I'm like,
Yeah.
oh my gosh. But if you guys want, we can definitely look at trying to figure out where that goes.
Okay. Why don't we figure out where it might go, and then we can look at it again and see whether it's addressing all of the concerns here.
Okay.
Are we ready to close the meeting? I thought people had a hard stop, some of.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Do I need a motion?
So move.
Seconded, Deborah?
Yes.
Okay.
Aye.
All in favor?
Yes.
Aye.
Aye.
We're done.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry
Thank
about the
you.
shortness of this one, but.
No, but it's good we still got together, because I think we've pushed forward on how we're going to do the public meeting.